Hello and welcome again to CTRL+F, the NSI Cyber and Tech Center's podcast. This season, we are bringing you a series of sessions from one of the nation's leading cyber events, the National Cyber Innovation Forum. My name is Andrew McClure, the president of the National Cyber Innovation Forum, and in this episode, we continue into part 2 of a conversation with the head of corporate and government affairs at Snowflake, Matthew Rose, the Chief Information Officer at the Department of Treasury, Sam Corcos, the Chief Economist at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Anup Malani, and the CTO in the Vice President's Task Force to Eliminate Fraud, Andrew McCarthy. Stay tuned for more discussion about how federal leaders are leveraging data, technology, and interagency collaboration to combat fraud across healthcare, tax and financial payment services, and public entitlement payments.
So Sam, earlier we had Secretary Coleman from the Navy specifically talk about the workforce, and I'd like to tag you into kind of this theme. You're dealing with modernization. You've stressed that improving payment integrity really depends on stronger engineering, stronger talent, broader talent. Again, we talked about this also in the agreement of some of the challenges you're dealing with. So if you could share some of that here on the stage, how key is highly skilled technical talent to build these systems, to maintain them, to scale them, to secure them, and highlighting, to your point, the gap between policy, law, and actually execution?
Yeah, I think it covers lots of ground. The ability to actually deliver these systems to prevent fraud, but it also comes into things like having people who can properly oversee contracts. The amount of money in contractor fraud in the federal government is vast. You come across it all the time. In the early administration, we cut, I don't know how many billions of dollars in contracts. Some of these contracts were for licenses for services that have never even been activated, and they're just on auto-renew every year, year over year, but the people who authorized it don't even know what it is, and so they don't know if they can cancel or not, so they just say, well, money is infinite, so just renew it forever. And so having people who actually understand what it is they're doing is critical. We've been extremely fortunate with the Tech Force initiative that OPM's been pushing. I think we're bringing in something like 300 engineers from industry. It's going to be transformational to our outcome and their ability to deliver these things. It's a vast increase in technical talent coming into the government right now.
Yeah, I know Director Cooper and the entire team is bringing a lot of folks and bringing a lot of new talent from across the country in to serve, and I think that's quite important. Over to CMS, I want to talk about one specific initiative that's really gotten some traction, I think providing some good value. CMS announced just recently an initiative to revalidate high-risk Medicaid providers and intensify the oversight in specific sectors. A 50-state provider revalidation initiative gave states only 30 days to submit their plans. Are you all seeing any lessons, any friction? Are states cooperating? Anything to share?
So yeah, that's exciting. In April, we started this initiative to go and contact each of the 50 states. We asked them to do redeterminations on high-risk providers. We also asked them to come back to us with an anti-fraud plan. Those plans are due June 4th. We've gotten a great deal of cooperation, so we're very excited about that. But in the process of speaking with the states, we've also understood or learned that there's a lot of unevenness across states in their capacity, their technical capacity to identify fraud. So, you have states like Nevada and Arizona that have great, AI-based early detection systems, but a lot of states where there's gaps. And so I think that there's a long way to go to actually kind of achieve the goals that we want. I want to take the opportunity to actually point out something. One of the things that's really interesting, we are getting great capacity to both bringing people into CMS, we're getting states to cooperate, we're getting AI systems going, but the real question, I think, is there's twofold. One is, it's not like this was not obvious before as a method. The question is, why didn't we do it? And I think it highlights something really, really important, two things really important. The first one is, we don't have a lot of incentive. So your example of the contracts are a great one. Who sitting there having to approve a contract or having to approve a payment has an incentive to say no? And if we look at the way fraud's traditionally been done, this ex post pay and chase, even that's driven largely by whistleblowers in our space. And so even as we build the technical capacity, we have to think, and at the state level too, we have to think about what incentives we leave in place for the people that are operating them to actually go act on them. And the second thing I think that's underappreciated is it's easy to focus on the technology. It's hard to focus on the things that come after you identify fraud. If you cancel a payment, they still have a right to appeal. That is to say, the vendor does, and say, hey, I'm owed the money, and you have to have the capacity to go and pursue them. Sometimes you don't even have the legal right to actually do that, so we need to build out our legal capacity, so there are regulatory gaps that are missing, and we actually need human resources to actually go and pursue some of the cases that are adjudicated, even when you stop sending payment out the door.
So fighting fraud is a nonpartisan, bipartisan. It's really an American issue, and the message coming out of CMS is, as we go against these problems, as we try to fight fraud, it's not about cutting benefits. It's not about focusing on one specific area. It's rather improving the entire program and making it stronger and more resilient. So as you're looking at states in particular, what are some steps states could take to implement stronger controls, whether it's high risk or otherwise, and to deal with some of those improper expenditures?
So, having just said that we need more than technology, we at least do need the technology. So I think that we'd like to see them fill the gaps. I mean, there are limitations in the databases, the claims databases that they maintain for Medicaid. We'd love to see those improved. We'd love them to be made real time so we can actually do stop and catch rather than pay and chase. So that's one. A second thing that we'd like to do is same sort of things that we're trying to do is try building out the infrastructure required to pursue these cases ex post. Those don't always exist. We are better resourced in general, the federal government, than states are, so they need to think about that. And that means, one, is make sure that they have the regulatory gaps filled, just like we're trying to fill the regulatory gaps, and then actually make a commitment to that, figure out how those incentives are going to work. I think that's work that's to be done, but we do appreciate the cooperation. I think the point that you made is very important. We're not cutting benefits. What we're trying to do is take every dollar we pull back from fraud is a dollar we can spend on legitimate care, and that's really important, and it should be a bipartisan issue.
Completely. If your boat's sinking, plug the holes before you roll. Completely. Sam, you highlighted TechForce. You highlighted some of the needs for technical. I'd like to come back to that issue if we can, and specifically as it relates to either the White House Task Force, CMS, or the other agencies. You're recruiting heavily. You bring highly technical talent in. You have the Do Not Pay system, which has been around for many years, but you have other things within Treasury. So as the talent comes in, how are you employing them to help, whether it's CMS, the White House, or other agencies, and is there any patterns you're seeing as the talent is coming in and you're employing them?
I think the biggest one, actually, just to something you mentioned about it, how did people not see this before? One of our engineers who's working on fraud stuff, he said, this is after a couple of weeks, he said, there's so much low-hanging fruit, I can't even get to the fruit without tripping over fruit. It's just like every step you take, you just step on like $10 million of fraud, or just waste. It's just everywhere, and it's both exciting and frustrating, lots of mixed emotions in dealing with all of the stuff, because it's just the amount of money that just gets shot out the money hose, and there's so few people who can actually affect it. I think we have contracts regularly that I feel like I have to renew because we don't have an alternative until we bring in technologists who can take over the contract. And we have the number of contracts that we've reduced. We've taken the talent in-house, a contract that was like $50 million a year, we do it in-house with 2 engineers, because the whole thing was largely fake. So the ability to bring in and whether is that fraud, it's certainly wasteful. I don't know. The boundaries between these things start to get really fuzzy.
That's interesting. I think to the point you have to look, right, and then you have to do something about it. And Andrew, we've got about 7 minutes left, and we're going to come down the line here in a Fury session here in a second, fast questions, but we've talked a lot about what's occurring at Treasury. We've talked quite a bit about what's happening at CMS. The task force is not, if you will, scoped just for those 2 areas. It's scoped to combat fraud. It's scoped to help fix the problem. So as you're seeing patterns, whether it's one program at CMS or across, what are the lessons we can learn? Whether it's administration or payments or housing or benefits or other entitlement programs. What are you thinking, as we look at trends?
Yes, so adding some creativity to that, Sam's right about it's everywhere, but at the same time, offering accountability and transparency to the taxpayer through data is a really creative solution to maybe solving it. So what CMS did about a month ago with the Open Data Initiative and putting that out in the public sphere and having, just working at the task force and communicating with the agencies, there have been dozens of folks that have already come to us and analyzed that data, seeing huge indicators for potential fraud. I'd like to encourage all the agencies to start with that, but on the other side of the coin, it's not a sort of one-size-fits-all executive order that's going to be applicable on the tech side to all of the challenges within these agencies. Great example is the front-end identity and eligibility verification system. What might be very helpful for an entity like the Department of Education may not be as applicable to HUD. And they've had great gains in the last few weeks since we set up the task force. Last 5 weeks, Department of Education has implemented that front-end identity and verification mechanism, or eligibility mechanism, and every week they're saving between $10 and $20 million. They're up to like $100 million here, just from putting that in. Now, is that going to be across the board helpful for every agency? Probably not. But finding both creative mechanisms like CMS and having a blanket approach, and then going in and finding creative approaches per agency is really how we're going to solve this problem.
That's helpful. So again, we only have a few minutes left. We'll go to rapid round. You've got policymakers in the room. You've got those in the media that are going to be talking about this and telling others about what was said here today. You have vendors in the room, of which like I represent, where we have capabilities. So we've talked a bit about some of the challenges, but be very interested, Andrew, starting with you and going down the line, what are the biggest barriers we have to modernizing, the mission here? And is there specific capabilities that come to mind as you guys start to move out against this?
Yeah, I kind of walked through all the capabilities that we're interested in from an advisory capacity to the agencies and plugging the gaps on the boat. I'll mix metaphors here. But really the biggest deterrence would be policy and culture, and just starting with the cultural reference here. When you go to agencies, the initial pulling of the teeth was really tough with some folks that are used to getting money out the door as fast as possible in past administrations, rather than operating your institution like it's a Fortune 100 company that's relying on best-of-breed technologies to gain a profit. We referred to incentive earlier. So culture within the institutions, and then policy, right? So getting folks on a personnel level to not hold up authorities and get the ball moving. And then on the other side of the coin with policy, making sure that this is institutional moving forward, so putting a legislative package forward that will bake this cake for us.
I agree on the culture. There has to be a culture change where fraud is not tolerated. It's not only thought of as theft from the taxpayer, but also theft from patients who actually need the money to take care of their illnesses. A second one, I think, is there's some surprising things that we need to invest in beyond, obviously technology, that's the potential is there, it's very clear. I already talked about the regulatory challenges, but the other thing is just having enough human resources in the room, ALJs, to actually hear appeals from fraud cases so we can get them through the system. The backlogs on some of these is quite massive, and that reduces our ability to claw back money that's already gone out. So I think that's another area where we can work on. A third possibility that we could work on is hitting those incentives. So we used to have, for example, we have these contractors called MACs and UPICs, and they have some incentives to go after fraud. They actually get a percentage of the gains, and experimenting more with that, I think, is a great idea. They've done it in the past, and then the providers complained that they were catching too much, and so then we limited their ability to do that. Going back to a situation where we allow more incentives might be something worth exploring, at least on a pilot basis. So I think those are some of the things that we can do to improve the efficacy of our anti-fraud efforts. Can I just leave you with one number, though? Despite that, the rate of return on fraud, even with the tools that we just have, are quite high. We estimate that for every dollar we invest, we get over $22 worth of money back. It's a good thing to look at.
I think in my world, it really just comes down to workforce, because in the technology world, it's really about implementation. If there was a policy thing that is making that much harder, it's probably the statutory cap on compensation for technology roles. For early stage career people, we can actually be relatively competitive, but getting senior leaders in technology roles, we are so far from what industry compensates. You tend to get people who really don't know what they're doing in these roles. Like as a data point, the CIO Treasury role is responsible for about $10 billion a year in budget, maybe 10,000 engineers, and it pays $160,000 a year. And you're not allowed income from any other source, and there's all these other limitations, that's obviously not why I'm here. But you can imagine in the future, and in all these other agencies, hiring people who are willing to do that is a really tall order, and then the layer below them, it's a tall order. But that would be a policy change that would have a big impact.
Yeah, Sam, I appreciate it. Andrew, I appreciate it. We've only got a few seconds left. We're here in the Senate. You've got a lot of people gathered. Is there anything else that we didn't cover today that you would like to highlight for the team here? Sam, I'll start with you.
You can come back to me. I can't think of anything right now.
Anup, anything we missed or anything CMS would like to let us know?
I want to highlight the team that we have here. Dr. Oz is great. Kim Brandt is amazing. The entire workforce the team that she's assembled is remarkable. Just to put a kind of number on it, in the last year, I know we said that fraud's at the level of hundreds of billions. It's hard to get it all back, but they've gotten $40 billion back. That's a remarkable accomplishment. So kudos to Dr. Oz and Kim Brandt.
Completely agree. Yeah, well done. Andrew, anything?
You referenced the Senate's, I didn't, but I would just like to leave you with this. Look, the war on fraud has a favorability of 85% to, don't ask me who the other 15 are, but this is not a partisan issue. I want to reach out to red and blue states alike across the board to say, look, we want to help your most vulnerable of your population, and we're excited to do so moving forward.
Absolutely. Sam, I'm seeing you put the microphone down, so we're good. No, I'm going to leave with this. Thank you all for serving. Thank you for tackling this. This is a sober and important mission, and I know, to your point, I can't think of another mission, that has the ROI that you highlighted. So thank you all very much for serving. So with that, we have the last panel. We're going to have Andrew up here to transition us here. But gentlemen, thank you again. If we can give them a round of applause.
That's a wrap for today's episode. Thanks to Hannah Haynes, Keelan Wolf, Claude Jennings, and the entire NSI CTC team in helping us produce today's episode. Be on the lookout every Monday and Wednesday for more sessions from the National Cyber Innovation Forum. If you like what you heard, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks again.